But tonight we start with the big story that is unfolding in Mali as we speak, because exactly a week after the Paris terror strikes, there's been another massive terror siege in Mali's capital of Bamako. 2 or 3 armed attackers first went on a shooting rampage, taking 170 guests and staff hostage at the Radisson Blu Hotel in Bamako. Malian security forces have stormed the building and managed to free dozens of hostages. At least 9 people have been reportedly killed in the terror siege. The gunmen, believed to be Islamist terrorists, managed to enter the building in a car with a diplomatic number plate. Reports say Ansar Dine, an Al-Qaeda affiliate, is behind the Bamako attack. As many as 20 Indians who stayed at the hotel annex have been safely evacuated, but a number of Frenchmen are among the hostages. France has now rushed a team of counter-terror personnel to Bamako to try and end the siege at the moment. Okay, I just want to go to our correspondents first to get a sense of what exactly is happening as we speak. Smita Sharma is still there with us live in Paris. Remember, France is where the action took place a week ago, and now it's shifted to Mali, but there is a large French presence there in that West African Republic. Gaurav Sawant is joining me here to give me, in our studios, to give me a sense of exactly what is the topography of this area. But first to you, Smita, there in Paris. Is there now a heightened alert, a sense of growing concern that all French targets could be under, in a sense, the scanner of the terrorists, and Mali was a particular soft target there?
Absolutely, Rajdeep. You know, even in Mali, the French connection is not to be lost. Remember, while I'm in Paris, where it's exactly a week since that last Friday carnage, where 129 lives were lost in those terror attacks, today in Mali, which was, of course, the France was the former colonial masters for Mali, and in August, in fact 2013, January onwards, in Chad, in Mali, the French forces began their intervention very actively, very strongly, given the fact that the Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, they became very active in North Africa, and Ansar Dine that we are talking about is its front in Mali. They had conducted a similar, in fact, operation in August this year, where at least 13 people were killed in a strike in a hotel in central town, including 5 UN peacekeepers. Right. And just a few weeks back, in fact, Ghali, who's the head of this Ansar Dine, he had issued a video saying that the Crusaders must be punished, and particularly, in fact, the French intervention must be stopped. So yes, we are seeing redefining of security situation, not just in France, in the EU, and perhaps a realignment of all these international jihadi forces as well.
That precisely is the concern, Gaurav, that these are the reorganization of all these jihadi forces, many of them linked to each other, whether it's Ansar in Mali, Boko Haram in Nigeria, Al-Qaeda in other parts of the world, ISIS, of course, now being seen as one of the dominant terror groups. Give us a sense of what exactly are we looking at here in Mali at the moment?
In Mali at the moment, the Malian special forces, they're inside the hotel. That raid is underway. There has been exchange of fire off and on. About 40 people still suspected to be hostages here, many of them French. It's feared there were some Chinese. Fortunately, all Indians, 20 Indians who were in this hotel compound, they are safe. The Ministry of External Affairs has confirmed that. When you're talking about that bigger picture, Rajdeep, you talked about the Al-Qaeda, you talked about, the Islamic State, Boko Haram, other affiliates. Now, it's also Lashkar-e-Taiba in Pakistan, and these are all terror groups, Rajdeep, that seem to be operating on similar lines. Remember, this Malian terror attack, entering a hotel and carrying out a strike there is so similar, eerily similar to 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks. Pakistan-sponsored Lashkar-e-Taiba was a part of it that executed this plan. Now, terror groups, Rajdeep, are coming together. That is what intelligence agencies are saying. They're copying each other. They're following each other's examples. Last week's attack in France, again, very similar to 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks. Smita used the word crusade, that these people are saying that crusaders need to be brought down. Is that the face of terror? That's the big threat, Rajdeep, because even here there was a Reuters report that said that these terrorists, when they went into the hotel, diplomatic number plates, they were shouting Allahu Akbar, and those who were able to recite verses of the Holy Quran, they were allowed to go. Some of the others were killed, Rajdeep.
Okay, we're going to have to see how this is going to play out at the moment. Clearly, At the moment, it appears French targets are being singled out by these terror groups. Smita Sharma there in Paris, Gaurav Sawant here in our studios. I want to go at this moment to a very special guest who's joining me because Obiageli Ezekwesili is the former vice president of the World Bank in Africa. But importantly, Obiageli, you have been the star campaigner against the Boko Haram in your country of Nigeria. You've been campaigning to bring back the girls kidnapped by the Boko Haram last year. So you know a thing or two about terror groups operating in Africa. Your first reactions to this hostage crisis in Mali, do you see it linked to the widening terror nexus across the world, or do you believe it's very specific to what is going on in that part of Africa at the moment?
Of course it is. I mean, some days ago it was in Yola in my country, Nigeria, and then it was Kano in my country, Nigeria. Then the next thing it was Paris, and with Beirut. Now we see Mali. It is clear that there's an escalation and a spread. It's almost like a contagion effect. And it is time for the leaders of the world to now understand that we have a common enemy, and that they must act collectively and decisively to tackle
You're saying there is a common enemy. You yourself have been waging this sort of battle against the Boko Haram, trying to build up pressure across the world so that these girls who were kidnapped by Boko Haram last year are rescued. Do you see a wider connection, ma'am, in the manner in which these groups are now operating, links between Boko Haram, Ansar possibly in Mali, the ISIS in other parts of the world, Al-Qaeda? Do you see a clear connection between these radical Islamic groups?
Even if one was not speculating and basically being analytical, the fact that they have the same fundamental methodology in dealing with issues of conflict, there must be something that they find not acceptable. But it is not by violence you resolve anything that is unacceptable to you. Now, if there is a similarity in approach, then we must begin to assume that there is some convergence going on somewhere. It is time that the world should forge its own convergence in order to fight back on this matter.
You say it is time for this convergence, but what specifically can the world do today which it has not done so far, in your view, to fight this kind of terror?
Well, the world needs to come together and understand that the lines are blurred in terms of territorial integrity, that we have to act as collectives, and they must put their resources together. They must put their human resources together, their technology together, their intelligence together, their armies together. Every of the resource that the world needs to act together must come together. This is not time for people to go off in different ideas of what it means to protect their own. Look, the whole world is under threat from these people, and the whole world must act together.
But do you think that because this has happened in Africa, that when it happens in Africa, when it happens in a Mali, it doesn't get registered the same way as a Paris, that the Western world in that sense also has a hierarchy? So terror attacks in the Western world will register across the global media in a manner that perhaps Mali or what happened in Nigeria tragically last year does not.
Well, you know, I mean, look, to call a spade a spade. It's always been the case that the developing world has less presence in global news media. I mean, the powers that control news media can determine the content and the substance that matters. Corporate developed economies can determine a lot about what takes priority in the news. So that is for real. But the issue is that there is no part of the world that is safe from these kinds of threat.
No, I take your point, but there is also the angle of the growing threat of Islamic jihadi groups operating in Africa at the moment. They're targeting French targets at the moment. Many believe this is linked to Islamic State. And what is the common thread at the end of the day is the misuse of Islam. That in the name of Islam, these groups are waging some kind of a jihad. How do you respond to that?
I just think that more of our Muslim brothers and sisters who insist that Islam and everything in the Quran abhors the kind of reprehensible savagery that we're seeing. They need to speak up more on this, because this cannot be about religion. Nothing about religion requires a sane mind to kill their neighbor.
You know, that's important. You're saying Islamic group, moderate Islamic groups need to speak out against these terror groups. Now, you yourself, ma'am, have fought against Boko Haram. You're trying to get back the girls, almost 300 of them who were kidnapped by Boko Haram, the schoolgirls who were kidnapped. You've been doing this for the last 18 months. Now there are reports that some of these girls may have actually gone into the sex trade. Some of them may have been forcibly converted to Islam. Do you still have hope that these girls can be rescued in your home country of Nigeria?
We are not going to let the world forget our Chibok girls. We're not going to let the world forget them. The world must not forget our Chibok girls. The world must not forget the Yazidi women. The leaders of this world must rise up and know that inhumanity to one is inhumanity to all. Every time one of us dies, something dies in all of us. It is time to never turn our backs on those who suffer, because we all suffer. We suffer whether we believe it or not. Right now, I can imagine that in various capital cities of the world, people are very tense and people are very anxious and feeling insecure. It takes proactivity for us to be able to contain this contagion. I do not think that the world cannot solve this problem. What we require now are for leaders to rise. Leaders must rise in full stature and take on the most difficult decisions that needs to be made in order to solve the problem that we all confront at this time.
In a sense, ma'am, you are now calling for a global fight against terror. That this fight cannot be one country's fight. It cannot be India's fight against Pakistan-based terror groups. It cannot be the West's fight against ISIS. It cannot be your country's fight against Boko Haram or Mali's fight against Ansar. There needs to be a global force against terror. Am I correct?
It must be a global concerted effort. And on your question, we have hope concerning our Chibok girls.
Yes.
Our hope concerning those girls is endless. We will keep hoping until the action that results in their being brought back happens. And it is results we want. Enough of talk, enough of promises and pledges. We need action that delivers results. That's what citizens of the world are asking for at this time.
Obiageli Ezek Sweli, it's very important to have you here to give us that important African perspective. Remember, terror is not fought in only one part of the world. Today, what we are seeing in Mali unfolding is a sign of just how terror has gone across the world. I appreciate you joining us, and more power to you in your fight against the Boko Haram, ma'am. Thank you very much for joining us today here on the news today.
Nisagama manipamaga nipamaga sanipamani sapasa जहाँ तक याद आती रहेगी।